NautoAis we had Atari Japan that we ended up selling to Namco. Atari Japan actually put Namco in the video game business.
Oh.
Before that, the only thing they did were kiddie rides.
Why did you end up selling it to Namco? What?
Okay, we were young and dumb. And it turns out that in order to establish a business in Japan, you need all kinds of regulations, none of which we did. We actually started it by taking suitcases full of money, cash, and we rented a building, we hired people.
In Tokyo? Or
in Tokyo.
Oh, man.
And it was a thing where all of a sudden, they kind of started catching up to us, and we thought, okay, this is not good. Maybe we can sell it.
Did you make a profit on the thing?
We actually did.
Nice. All's well that ends well.
Yeah, but it was just, there's an interesting story there too. Pong for the home did not do well in Japan.
Too much space?
Kids wouldn't have their friends over. There wasn't a place. Homes were too small, and so kids would meet in a coffee shop or a karaoke center or something like that, but not at home. So the game that took off in Japan was actually Breakout. That's what established the consumer game market in Japan.
We had a coin-op lab with the current leading coin-op games in it there in the VCS division. So we had a Pac-Man coin-op around, and honestly, it didn't really grab me the way Defenders did. Defenders was the game that really sung to me. Bob Pilar remembers this differently than I remember it, but the boss at that time, Dennis Coble, said, okay, there's 2 projects to be done, Pac-Man and Defenders. And Bob said to me, I don't see how to do Pac-Man, so I'll do Defender. The thing that made the dots was what's called Playfield. So Playfield was for, in the 1975 arcade games, was the chunky stuff you were driving around that was static, that was just fixed, that you couldn't change. But you could actually get in on the 2600 and change the playfield on the fly. Now, the maze is basically what playfield was for. Using the playfield for the dots was not what playfield was for, but we did. It wasn't easy, but basically, in the same way you could chop the screen up into vertical slices, you could say, in this slice, when I get to this part of this slice, I'm going to go through and change the background as we go across the screen. But if you actually want to change them during the gameplay, if you want the second half of the screen to be different from the first half of the screen, you actually have to go and rewrite the playfield registers while the electron beam is moving across the screen. And that is doable, and that is how I did the dots. And then after that, we had discovered Flickr. Now, Flickr and Pac-Man is a big deal. One of the things you can do is just say, I've got two things that you can draw. 1975, two of those was great. Now we had 5 of them on the screen that mattered. Pac-Man has 4 ghosts and a Pac-Man and a fruit, which is actually 6 things that you would call players in some of our parlance, or sprites in normal video game parlance. And they are, they're little cartoon characters. They change across the screen like the dots you're picking up, they're just little pucks, little ones. And there's only 2 of those. So, Flickr happened, right? Flickr happens by saying, I'm going to always play the Pac-Man, and I have 4 ghosts, and I'm going to draw one of them every 4th frame. And that's it. And then the ghosts are sitting there, they're on for a frame and off for 3, and then on for a frame and off for 3, and it looks horrible. And people know that. And I do so, and I say, look, they're ghosts. I mean, you could see them, they were good enough. I made this decision in Pac-Man to support the 2-player game. So for me, what I considered to be really important about the coin-op game, and a lot of coin-op games do this, they're 2-player games. You come up, you put in 2 quarters, player 1's up, player 1 gets through however far and then loses, dies. And then player 2 comes up and plays their screen, and when they die, player 1 comes back and their screen is saved where they left off. Right, so this is, you're both progressing, basically to see who can get the furthest, right? So you have to pick up where you left off for that. Storing what your score was, which is not that bad, but where all of the dots were and what level you were on in terms of difficulty, used, I'm going to say, a lot of ROM. And I laugh when I say a lot of ROM because a lot of ROM was like 22 bytes, right? But 22 bytes is a good chunk out of 128. There's 128 bytes of RAM. What's the problem? What are you whining about, Todd? But in that case, that was a decision I made. I really looked forward to people in living rooms having the coin-op experience, having a more social experience than watching another person play the game straight through and then taking turns that way.
I can recount knowing that Pac-Man was coming. We did a pre-order and we went to Sears. I got the Sears Telegames version of it, the black box version. Our whole family hopped in the station wagon. We went to go and we waited in line. We would play 2-player and hand off to the next, because it was my mom, my dad, my brother. And we played this game 2-player quite often, and we had our own kind of tournament kind of going on in the family and everything like that. But when we think about it as a multiplayer game,
It never occurred to me that it didn't have to be a 2-player game.
I love that it was a 2-player game.
But I imagine people sitting on their couch in their living room with their buddy after school playing a game and going, the other games.
So I had it timed to precision because when I was in school, we had a half-hour lunch, and I lived about 5 minutes away from the school. So my friend and I would run home, and the importance of having a two-player mode was it kept it fair. Because if one of us just started playing, the other person didn't get a turn.
Right.
I think that after they just play through all
Until
their
the
lives.
whole games, right?
Yeah. And so that really sucked. So two-player mode was essential when you had very time-critical
Well,
play.
kind of not just that. I imagine that the whole emotional dynamic of, okay, my turn. I'll see how I do with this life.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now it's my life. And then yours, it's like, and like I get what you just said, the alteration is at a finer grain.
Yeah.
So you both get more kind of, you get maybe the same amount of playtime total.
But we ended up went from a very competitive, when it was just one game at a time, to us actually kind of like cooperatively wanting each person to do really well. I don't know what the psychological reason for that was.
The Friday before the Monday that I started, the Activision crew left. They all just like up and left to form Activision. They wanted their name on the titles and they wanted royalties. So after a year or so, after a couple years, a bunch of my friends left to form a company that did another Activision. They left to form a company called Imagic. And then one of the Atari engineers got hooked up with a major Hollywood outfit and started talking about doing another Activision Imagic, not a deal where we actually got compensated at like a fraction of the profits of the products we did. You know, like Atari was paying engineers $35,000 a year to make 2 games that sold $500,000 each with a $20 or $15 margin. So they were making bank and paying reasonable salaries for something that actually some of us were the only people who could do at that point at a reasonable rate. And one day I went into my boss's office and I said to him, "George, I really like working here, but it's starting to cost me money." So they created a royalty program. The next week, it was 10 cents a cart, which is a pittance, actually. We were not businessmen. We were software engineers. We were pocket protector, thick glass nerds. We were nerds and burnout hippie nerds, and we were not Steve Jobs. We were not going, no, 10 cents isn't enough. We went, oh, that's great. And that was like in very early March. And then Pac-Man sold 3 million copies in 2 weeks. And in early April, I got a check for $300,000, and that was awesome. So my last name is Fry, F-R-Y-E. And there's a boot company. Someone in CoinOp, someone had gotten a big poster for Fry boots and written in large letters at the top, "Why Fry?" It's there's a thing in Logic layout where if you put a line across the top of something, it's a knot. So I took a big black pen and put a black line across the top of the Y, because why not Fry? I am the oldest I have ever been. Got the whole rest of my life ahead of me. It's the longest since those times. And I actually am kind of having some kind of pensive retrospection. It's like I wasn't really attuned to the impact that giving me $1 million had on people who were actually, I'm going to say, this is going to gag coming out of my throat, even more technically capable than I was, who could have done a better job of Pac-Man if that had been their role. And I just, why me? It's just right. The not wrong person at just the right place at just the right time.
First the Pac-Man eats through a maze of dots. Then the Pac-Man heads for the corner spots. Then he eats his fill of a power pill. And then all those ghosts turn blue. Boo! And Pac-Man eats them all too.
Only Atari makes the Pac-Man home video game, and you can only play it on an Atari video game system.
Have you played Atari today?